I'd like to start off by asking this question. By a show of hands, how many people rely on one of these devices every day of their life? There are several reasons why the smartphone is a personal companion. Well, let's put it like this, my personal companion. It doubles as my music player when I'm on the bus, heading to and from work. I'm drowning out the noise of loudmouth teenagers or Jehovah's Witnesses trying to convert me to God when I'm already a Christian. And also, it works very well when I'm in the laundry room as I'm spending 2 hours of my life washing clothes. This phone right here is also doubles as my Kindle book reader. Over 280 books are downloaded onto this phone. Now before this, I used to be a person that would go to the library, get a lot of books at the time, but I'd only have like 3 weeks to return it. So with this phone, I can just download it and read them at my leisure. Plus, it is my portable video game player where I don't have a PlayStation or Xbox or any of that stuff. I got rid of it a long time ago. But I download PlayStation and Xbox like games on this phone and it basically satisfies everything I need. Also, it's my comic book app. I have a whole bunch of comics at my house, but I download a whole bunch of comics onto my phone as well. That way, if I don't want to read the physical copy, I can just read the phone copy. Star Trek is also my favorite show. So imagine my surprise where I can actually I have found a way to download all of my favorite episodes and videos and movies onto the small little device. Plus, add to the fact is a camera, camcorder, personal bank app, writing app, gives you unlimited access to the internet, and of course it's a phone, and you have the ultimate companion. Now I'd like to start off explaining what my life was like before smartphones were created. One of my biggest problems growing up, fellow Toastmasters, was I suffered from a childhood of boredom. I reached an age of maturity without any siblings to play with. And by me growing up in a small family, I only had a few cousins. Majority of them were not in my age group. And the one cousin that was, I didn't come in contact with him very often. So it was just me, myself, and I. And that can be pretty damn boring. So all I did was go to school on the weekdays and go to home on the weekdays and go to my father's house on the weekends. I was basically what you call a latchkey kid. School-wise, I did have friends, but they were only friends that I hung with during school hours, so I didn't really get to hang with them outside of school. So this little device, if this was created back in the mid-90s, would probably have relieved a lot of the boredom and loneliness that I went through. Now, as I think back on it, yes, there are some pros and cons of having a smartphone. The pros of having a smartphone in terms of school would be, I had a lot of trouble in math, especially math and biology growing up. Now, just imagine if smartphones were invented back then. All you have to do is go into Google Play or whatever iPhone's compatible of that, type in math tutor or biology tutor, download it, bam, you basically have the answers to every question that you have. Or imagine being able to go on Wikipedia and do a book report instead of going to the library, getting tons of books and doing the research on that. But with all of the applications a smartphone offers, I know I never would have let it out of my sight. Of course though, with all good things, there are some downsides. I can just imagine what harm I would have done with a smartphone at my age. I'm not the most, fellow Toastmasters, I'm not the most coordinated person in the world, and I'm 33. Now just imagine being 12, 13, 14, And I would have probably dropped it on several occasions. And plus, knowing how school and with school, I would have had the phone as a distraction. And the teachers would have probably confiscated it. Now I could just imagine being at a family gathering, and while family members were being congruent with each other, interacting with one another, I would have been on the smartphone probably doing something like this, just probably nullifying and ignoring everybody, and thus getting it taken away by a family member. This is where the downfall of cell phones come in. I've read several articles lately how people can be obsessed with their smartphones. There's one particular video on YouTube that is entitled, "I Forgot My Phone." In this video, it shows how people are in the middle of the street on their phone, not paying attention to their surroundings, or how they are there in public places and like enjoying time with friends, and it turns where everybody is sitting, it's all on their phone, and their friends is basically talking to themselves. One of the most disturbing scenes is when somebody bowled a perfect strike at a bowling alley, but nobody was paying attention because everybody was doing basically like this, recording the moment instead of actually being in the moment. And one very startling discovery I came up with I discovered online was, "For the children's sake, put the smartphone down," which is an article I saw online, where this talks about how children pay attention more to their phones than their children. Parents do that. I'm sorry. This brings me to one question: is it considered rude to have your cell phone out, such as places as events, for restaurants, friends' houses, and weddings? I have to say yes. A smartphone should be used socially at times. I'm actually guilty of this. I went to Atlanta with my mother 5 years ago. Now, instead of just enjoying the sights, being in the moment, I'm sitting up there doing like this, taking pictures of everything, just to the point where my mother was like, "Will you please put the smartphone away?" One major event was, and then I'm going to wrap this up, one major time was when my friend was moving to Phoenix, and we decided to spend time together for one last time. Well, I didn't know that was the day fellow Toastmasters that I was going to discover Angry Birds. So I'm sitting up there, she's driving, I'm playing on her phone on Angry Birds, and she asked me finally, "Michael Mills, will you please put the damn phone away and so we can talk?" You have to use the smartphone in moderation due to the many features it encompasses. It wasn't until those moments where I realized I need to put those smartphone down in order to have more human face-to-face interaction, i.e. Toastmasters. In conclusion, I have stressed out how the smartphone must be used in moderation. The smartphone is a very powerful tool, and it has changed the way of life with all the apps that it has and one-touch access to the internet. But if it is not used properly and in moderation, it can control your life to the point where a person can worship it in excess. Thank you.
You may have seen it in the evening news. You may have read about it in the newspaper on your way to work. O'Hare noise complaints increasing, skyrocketing. Northwest Side residents demanding relief from the constant airplane noise flying over their communities. You may have said to yourself, who are these people who are constantly complaining? Shouldn't they have known better than to live near an airport? I mean, that's pretty much what you get, right? If you live near an airport, you're going to get your airplane noise. Well, fellow Toastmasters, I'm here today to tell you the real story of why these people who live on the northwest side of Chicago and also west of O'Hare Airport, why they're complaining, why they're so upset, why they are so angry and feel so helpless. So just for some clarification, the area we're talking about here is part of Chicago from Irving Park Road all the way up into Skokie and Niles, Touhy Avenue, and then west of O'Hare, talking about Bensonville, Elmhurst, and those areas. So fellow Toastmasters, the story begins in the late 90s. It's a story you've heard before. O'Hare and flights not being on time, dead last in terms of efficiency. It's a problem you've heard. It's still a problem today. So the city decided to implement a plan to improve efficiency at O'Hare. And this plan called for building new runways. And the idea is that the runways would be similar to those at Atlanta's Jackson Hart Airport. Parallel runways, so all the flights go in one way and depart the other way, or vice versa. So after many court battles involving the city and the suburbs, and I would say some very unethical behavior, downright borderline criminal behavior by the city, the O'Hare modernization plan was passed. So fellow Toastmasters, in 2005, the Federal Aviation Administration, an agency that I'd like to say that is not liable to and does not answer to any citizen, only answerable to the President of the United States and the majority of Congress. Federal Aviation Administration, set forth a draft called the O'Hare Modernization Draft Environmental Impact Statement. This was in 2005, and this was how they saw the noise, the pollution affecting the northwest side and areas west of the O'Hare. If you take a look at this, let me tell you, you have to be an expert on aviation to understand this. This was the draft report. This draft report was put forth in area libraries, none of which ironically were in any part of the northwest side or north side of Chicago, for the public to comment on. And there were also a series of 3 events where local citizens could ask questions regarding these plans to the FAA. These meetings were not anywhere in Chicago, and the copies of these plans, there's only one copy, and that was at Harold Washington Library, which, let me tell you, is not that close to the northwest side. So there's a fair amount of deception here on the part of the Federal Aviation Administration in the city of Chicago. So let's fast forward to October of 2013. A new parallel runway opened, which began the process of sending more and more flights over the northwest side. The airflow pattern is one where the planes fly, regardless of where they're coming from. They come over the lake and then they fly over the northwest side, starting around Edgewater, Andersonville, Rogers Park, and then over Jefferson Park, Edison Park, Park Ridge. This sent complaints skyrocketing. And then in March of 2014, the FAA decided that all the planes were going to come now in this airflow pattern over the lake, over the northwest side. So fellow Toastmasters, prior to this O'Hare modernization plan, there are several diagonal runways. You can see them here. So these diagonal runways allowed airplanes to come and go in different areas, so the noise was distributed. So So it wasn't concentrated in one area. So by going to only parallel runways, closing down these diagonal runways, all the noise, all the pollution, all the planes, or either go in one direction, either over the northwest side, or when the wind pattern is changed, over the other side. Now I can pass this around, take a look. So, I've told you a lot about the plans, but let me tell you about the human element. 400 planes a day fly over my house. 400 planes, and they are at least 1,200 feet. I can see the runway. I can see the landing gear coming down. I can see the windows on the planes. Using just my iPhone, I have an app which allows me to check the decibel level. 80 to 90 decibels, extremely loud, all day, all night. I've heard them at 4 in the morning. I don't have air conditioning. I've been woken up 4 or 5 in the morning many times in the summer. If you can't live in your house, if you can't feel comfortable, then where can you? Your house is your castle. It's where you relax. I feel like, and I know many other people feel like, they are under siege. It sounds like an air show constantly. Fellow Toastmasters, this is nowhere to live. And I hope if you take anything away from this, you'll understand that the city has not been trustworthy, has not been straight with your fellow citizens on the northwest side of Chicago. And thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That's the sound of potential issues. Have you ever been in a situation where you're with someone, or with many people, that there's an issue that needs to be resolved? Have you wondered how issues could be resolved correctly? Have you imagined that perhaps you could help the situation be resolved? Well, Toastmasters, our guest, and of course, Madam Toastmaster. Issue processing is part of our DNA. It's almost like we have it in our bones because we have other people and we have different attitudes, beliefs, thoughts, ideas, and so issues come up. It's the way we are. If we don't want issues, be by yourself. And even then you might have issues. But that's another story. Being with others is what we want to accomplish in life, so that we can get ahead. Simply because we're not by ourselves. In fact, the more we have with us, the further along that we get. Building a team, building a company, building a nation, being part of the world. And it all stems from the process of correctly solving issues. Any issue. And it could be the sky is blue or not blue, it snows, it doesn't snow, it could be all kinds of things. There are different issues. But let me share with you, fellow Toastmasters, steps that you can resolve issues. Any issue at any time. Would you like to know that?
Yes.
So take notes, because there's 7 steps. And I'll go through them really quickly because I don't have a lot of time. But once you have these, you'll have it. 7 steps, very quickly step. The first one, either one-on-one or two, one of many, the person that has an issue simply has to answer the question, how do I X? How do I get better? How do I get along with people? What is the issue? How do I? That's how it starts. How do I? And either the audience or you listen to that and ask questions. So let me get this straight. How do you And have you tried, what have you done so far? What's been your thoughts so far? What have you considered? So you ask questions. Questions. Very simple. So number one is issue statement. How do I overcome this? Number two is ask the questions. Number three is simply restate those issues. Maybe clarify those issues or prioritize it, clarify. Because you see, underlying a surface issue might be a deeper issue. And after asking those questions, remember to clarify them a little bit more, because it could be, how do I grow better in life? But the real question might be, how do I get along with others? Or a deeper question. So that's number 4. Restate it, and how do I restate it? So number 1 is, how do I, the issue. Number 2 is the questions. Number 3 is clarifying those issues. And number 4 is restating that, how do I, one more time. So that's number 4. Number 5 is, now you have an opportunity to make suggestions. Well, have you considered this? Or what would happen if you tried this? Or where would you like to go? And if that be the case, would you be able to do this? So those are suggestions. That's your opportunity to give feedback. That's number 5. So number 1 is, how do I issue clarification? Number 2 is questions. Restatement. Number 3, how do I again the issue? That's number 4. Number 5 is suggestions. Number 6 is take the top 3 suggestions and take an action. Commit to taking an action by a certain time. Be very specific. That's number 6. If you get to that stage and the person gets to that stage and isn't willing to commit to an action step, then maybe we need to go back to steps and re-clarify the issue. But once it's all clear and the suggestions are there, take that action. That's number 6. And number 7 is this worth it to you? Is this of value? If you took that action, is that the value that you would want? Is it of tremendous value, not only to you, but if you're in an audience, you could ask, because the audience may also have some of those issues, has anybody else here that participated and heard also feel the same way or feel that there's a value to them? There you have it. Your issue processors. You've graduated in less than 5 minutes because you see, number 1 is get that how do I, that issue. Number 2 is be able to ask questions. Number 3 is to clarify that issue. Number 4 is restate that issue. Number 5 is to be able to make sure that you make suggestions. Number 6 is take action. Number 7 is to be able to value that. There's some value. Fellow Toastmasters, go forth and resolve all the issues that you can. You are now certified Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rob.